This is the Nano 8.0 and it's the best Nano yet. What's going on, everybody? It's Joel here with as many reviews as possible, and today we're doing the review of the Reebok Nano 8.0. In January 2017, Reebok released the Nano 7.0, which quickly became probably the least well-received Nano of all time. In July of 2017, Reebok, for the first time ever, came out with a mid-season update to one of their Nanos in the Nano 7.0 Weave, which did fix the issue about the upper being too stiff, but the bigger problem remained intact, and that was the fact that the outsole and midsole combination were just really stiff. Pretty much all throughout 2017, people were calling for a re-release of the highly popular Nano 6.0s, which if you've seen any of my videos in the past, then you would know that I think that these are some of the best, if not the best, training shoes of all time. So it would take a hell of a shoe for me to think that something was better than one of my favorite shoes. And well, guys, it's here, and it's the Nano 8.0. So first off, let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that is the fact that yes, indeed, the Nano 8.0s do resemble the Nano 7.0s. There's a lot of design cues that remain the same between the two shoes, and that's for good reason. Shoe life cycles last 2 years before the shoe is completely redesigned. So that is why the 8.0s look like the 7.0s, but that is where the similarities end. The Nano 8.0s feel completely different than the Nano 7.0s. Just by looking at them, you wouldn't be able to tell, but you're just gonna have to take my word from this video. Despite resembling the 7s, the 8.0s actually have a completely redesigned flex weave upper, much like the one that you'll find on the JJ2s. Now, the thicker weaves run from the heel of the shoe towards the toe of the shoe versus from the lateral to the medial parts of the shoe. Now, probably the biggest change to the 8.0's upper is the fact that it has an internal booty system and a separate cage for the flex weave. The booty system is much like the one that you'll find on the Reebok CrossFit Grace, but it actually works much better in the Nano 8.0s because the flex weave is more flexible than the jacquard found on the Reebok Graces. Another huge upgrade to the 8.0s is that with the new booty system, you get a ton of cushioning throughout the whole upper of the shoe, especially in the toe area of the shoe. There's actually padding on top, which makes wearing the Nano 8.0s really comfortable, and a huge upgrade from the Nano 7.0s and even the Nano 7.0 Weaves. These are probably the most comfortable Nanos yet, which sounds crazy because they do definitely resemble the Nano 7.0s. Which brings me back to another subject, what I think about the looks of the Nano 8.0s. Yes, they do resemble the 7.0s, but I didn't think that those shoes were ugly either. I actually prefer the new flex weave upper design compared to the Nano 7.0 weaves. Do I think that these shoes look better than the Nike Metcon 4s or the DSX Flyknit 2s? No, I do not. But that does not make the Nano 8.0 a truly ugly or hideous shoe. And there are actually some really cool colorways that they are coming out with the 8.0. Now, another thing that is similar to the 7.0 but is not is the TPU heel counter. It's still there, it looks the same. It actually says Nano on one side, it does not say Nano 8, and on the other side it just says Reebok. There is no more CrossFit branding on the outside of this shoe. Now, what makes it similar but not is the fact that it's attached to the flex weave upper, so it's a little bit less stiff than it was on the Nano 7.0 weaves. It's really slight and most people aren't going to notice it, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Now, another thing that is different from the Nano 7.0 is the thickness of the insole. It does look the same, but it is a little bit thicker, and you're going to notice that in the forefoot mainly of the shoe. It's still an anatomical design, but it is just a slight bit thicker, which does lead to a little bit more of the cushioning of the Nano 8.0. Honestly, the insole doesn't really do a whole lot to change the comfort and flexibility of the Nano 8.0s. What you would really need to change is the midsole, and that's exactly what Reebok has done. They've gone back to the dual density midsole combination that is found on pretty much every Nano before the Nano 7.0. There's a stiffer heel compound, which is indeed softer than the one that is found on the Nano 7.0s, and that changes over to a much softer forefoot compound, which if you just touch, you're gonna notice the difference immediately. The in-shoe feel of the shoe is like night and day compared to the Nano 7.0. The 8.0s are way more flexible. This is a much more flexible, comfortable shoe. It's even more flexible than the Nano 6.0s are. And I'm gonna say that besides the 2.0s, these are going to be the most flexible Nanos that are out there. Now, another thing you wouldn't be able to tell just by looking is the outsole is also a different compound. If you notice, the Nano 7.0's gum compound is a little bit darker than it is on the 8.0's. It's because even though it has the same tread pattern, it is indeed more flexible and softer. Now, I did notice a difference while rope climbing in my Nano 8.0's. I had a little bit of a hard time climbing the ropes in these shoes. Much more difficult than I did in the Nano 7.0s and the Nano 7.0 weaves. That might be due to the softer compound. I thought the Nano 7s were a really good rope climbing shoe. Another issue that some people had with the 7.0s was that they could be a little narrow. I personally did not have this issue, but I am happy to tell you that the 8.0s are probably also some of the widest Nanos. They fit a lot like the Nano 3.0s and Nano 5.0s as far as the width in the toe box. But keep in mind that due to the new booty system and the cushioning that it provides throughout the whole upper, you're gonna feel like these shoes are a lot more fitted than pretty much every Nano out there. Now, some small changes to the upper of the 8.0 is that the tongue also comes with a little bit more cushioning, and there are new thinner laces, but I personally preferred the thicker laces from the Nano 7.0 weave because I just thought that they stayed tied a little bit better than these ones do. Now, one issue that I have with the new booty system is that there's a little bit of heel slip, and that's not usually an issue that you'll find on any Nano. Now, it's really slight and negligible, but if you're used to wearing Nanos, you're gonna notice it immediately. So when sizing your Nano 8.0s, I'm going to say go with your normal Nano size. Even though they do fit slightly wider, the length is the same as the Nano 7.0s and pretty much all the Nanos before it, except maybe the 2.0s, which I thought ran a little bit longer. The Nano 8.0s weighed in at 11.12 ounces per a men's 10, which is indeed lighter than the 7.0s and the 6.0s. And like every other Nano before it, the drop of the 8.0s is 4 millimeters. So if you already haven't figured it out, the Nano 8.0 is a completely different beast than the Nano 7.0. These are some of the best performing CrossFit shoes that I have ever tried, which are some crazy big words for me to say because I love the Nano 6.0s. As far as performance goes for the Nano 8.0s, I have to say that, man, these things are really good. I have been using these for about 2 months now, and I have put them through everything that you could possibly imagine doing. The Nano 8.0s are probably the best Nanos to run in because of that new dual density midsole and just how flexible the Flex Weave upper is. These feel like they're an extension of your foot. They feel like a sock. They move with your foot and not against your foot. It's really comfortable to have these on. But like I always say, no Nanos are good running shoes, and they're still gonna feel a little bit clunky just because of how wide they are. The forefoot cushioning is extremely flexible for things like burpees, box jumps, double unders, and like I said, the Nano 8s feel like they're working with your foot instead of working against your foot, which is why I think the Nano 8.0s are so good. Now, even though that new dual density midsole provides excellent cushioning and comfort for running, it doesn't detract anything from the lifting potential of the Nano 8.0s. But I have to say that if you liked the Nano 7.0 stiffness, you're gonna be a little bit disappointed in the Nano 8.0s because they're even softer than the Nano 6.0s. But like I said, these are still really good performing lifting shoes. I was able to do all of my max lifts in the Nano 8.0s without even thinking twice about being unstable or the cushioning being too soft or not getting the right power delivery. These are still very, very proficient weightlifting shoes. And if I had to pick between the 7.0s and the 6.0s and the 8.0s for an overall shoe to wear on a daily basis, I would pick the 8.0s because I can run in these, I can lift in these, I can jump in these. They're extremely responsive and they're extremely comfortable. So the Nano 8.0s compared to the Metcon 3s. The Metcon 4s are not out yet. I would choose the Nano 8.0s because one thing that I think that Nanos do really well is that they provide really good ground feel and feedback, whereas the Metcons have a little bit more energy return and feel a little bit springier, but they also feel a little bit more disconnected from the ground. I still think that both of these shoes are excellent shoes. It really just depends on the workout. If I was lifting, I would take the Metcon 3s. If I was doing a more well-rounded workout, then I would take the Nano 8.0s. The Nano 8.0s compared to the DSX Flyknit 2s. The Flyknit 2s are a really, really good shoe, and they are a vast, huge upgrade over the previous Flyknits. And I have to say that I actually like the Flyknit 2s over the Metcon 3s right now, but I feel more comfortable doing more serious workouts in the Nano 8.0s. So once again, I take the Nano 8.0s over the Flyknit 2s, but it is a very, very slight decision compared to the Flyknit 2s because I really like these shoes. And I think the Flyknit 2s look way better than the Nano 8.0s. The Nano 8.0s versus the No Bull trainers. Now, I do like the No Bull trainers. I think they're an excellent shoe. They're a very good performing shoe. The comfort of the Nano 8.0s trumps the No Bulls for sure. I am not a huge fan of the way that No Bulls look. I think that they're really, really plain, so I'm gonna say I like the Nano 8.0s better. The performance between these shoes, it really depends on what you're looking for. I think that Nanos and No Bulls feel very, very similar, but like I said, the cushioning and comfort of the Nano 8.0s is better than the No Bulls, which makes running in the Nano 8.0s better, and the flexibility of the Nano 8.0 is better than the No Bulls. Some people are gonna like the plainness of the No Bulls, some people are not going to like it, and I personally would choose the Nano 8.0s. The Nano 8.0s versus the Speed 2.0s, which in my opinion are still probably the best bang for your buck in all of training shoes, since they only cost like $100 and on sale they're like $50, which is ridiculous. When it comes to picking between these two shoes, if money was the issue, then go with the Speed 2.0s because they're excellent shoes, and they're gonna give you the same kind of performance as the 8.0s or the 6.0s at a fraction of the cost. But if I had to choose one shoe to compete in, and if money was no issue, then I would choose the 8.0s because in every single way, shape, and form, the 8.0s are better. They're better lifting shoes. I think that they are better running shoes because they fit my foot a little bit better than the more narrow platform of the Speed 2.0s. And the overall durability of the Nano 8.0s, in my opinion, I think the Flex Weave is just gonna last a lot longer than the Speed 2.0s. Nano 8.0. The Nano 8.0s versus the Nano 7.0 weaves. If all I was doing was weightlifting, then I would wear the Nano 7.0s, but there's just no comparison here. The Nano 7.0s are just no good compared to the Nano 8.0s. So get the Nano 8.0s because they are just way better. They're more comfortable, they're more flexible. You can lift in them just the same as the Nano 7.0s. And in my opinion, they look better. They don't have the blue midsole. The midsole on the 8.0s is, yes indeed, black. The Nano 8.0s versus the Nano 6.0s, and this is where it gets a little tricky because the Nano 6.0s are still, in my opinion, some of the greatest training shoes of all time. Now, like I said before, the Nano 8.0s are more comfortable, they're more cushioned than the Nano 6.0, so when it comes to running, the 8.0s are better than the 6.0s. But when it comes to lifting, the 6.0s are still better than the Nano 8.0s, though I would still say that the 8.0s have probably about 90% the lifting potential as the Nano 6.0s. I'm gonna say, in my opinion, the Nano 8.0s are the more well-rounded shoe just because they're more comfortable for everything else other than lifting than the Nano 6.0s. When it comes to the looks of the shoes, I'm gonna say it's a wash. I think certain colorways of the Nano 6.0s look good, but there are some that don't look so good. I feel the same way about the Nano 8.0s as well. There are some colorways that are pretty good with the 8.0s and some that are just really bad. So it's really gonna come down to preference when it comes to the looks of the 6 and the 8. But when it comes down to it, I'm gonna say that I have a new favorite Nano, and that's the Nano 8.0. So if you're watching this and you're thinking that I am feeding you some BS about the Nano 8.0, because how could it be different than the Nano 7.0? It looks the same as the Nano 7.0. Well, you're just gonna have to take my word for it. Me saying that the Nano 8.0s are the best Nano of all time is probably one of the craziest things that I have ever said, and I would never have thought I'd be saying, because I love the Nano 6.0. But the Nano 8.0 is the real deal. It's really, really, really good. And I would hate for you to miss out on such a good training shoe. Now they're gonna start selling the custom Nano 8.0s on December 19th, and the actual production ones go on sale on January 19th, 1 month later. And I'm not sure of the actual retail price, but I'm going to say that it's safe to assume it's gonna be the $130 like every other Nano. In closing, I'm gonna say that just don't judge a book by its cover. The Nano 8.0s are a completely different shoe than the 7.0s, and they're really, really good. So if you guys have any questions about the Nano 8.0s, feel free to leave them in the comment section. Make sure that you guys check me out at asmanyreviewsaspossible.com for the full Nano 8.0 written review, and on Instagram at asmanyreviewsaSpossible as well. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up button. If you didn't, press the thumbs down. And as always guys, please hit that like button, subscribe, and thanks for watching. This is the Nano 8.0, and it's the best Nano yet. What's going on everybody? It's Joel here with as many reviews as possible, and today we're doing the review of the Reebok Nano 8.0. In January 2017, Reebok released the Nano 7.0, which quickly became probably the least well-received Nano of all time. In July of 2017, Reebok, for the first time ever, came out with a mid-season update to one of their Nanos in the Nano 7.0 Weave, which did fix the issue about the upper being too stiff, but the bigger problem remained intact, and that was the fact that the outsole and midsole combination were just really, really stiff. Pretty much all throughout 2017, people were calling for a re-release of the highly popular Nano 6.0s, which if you've seen any of my videos in the past, then you would know that I think that these are some of the best, if not the best, training shoes of all time. So it would take a hell of a shoe for me to think that something was better than one of my favorite shoes. And well guys, it's here, and it's the Nano 8.0. So first off, let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that is the fact that yes indeed, the Nano 8.0s do resemble the Nano 7.0s. There's a lot of design cues that remain the same between the two shoes, and that's for good reason. Shoe life cycles last 2 years before the shoe is completely redesigned. So that is why the 8.0s look like the 7.0s, but that is where